The huge room was filled with strange sounds. Clicks, whistles, and deep humming voices mixed together as hundreds of alien beings talked at once. The Galactic Council meeting hall had never seen such panic before. For 3 years, something terrible had been eating entire star systems, and no one knew how to stop it. Ambassador Kepler stood at his blue metal desk, his scaly hands shaking as he looked at the data screen. The numbers were getting worse every day. 12 more planets had gone dark this week. The Vorthok swarm was moving faster now, and they were getting closer to the core worlds where billions of peaceful aliens lived, said General Morthok of the Korathi military. His forearms moved quickly as he spoke, showing star maps that flickered with red danger zones. Our best ships, our smartest weapons, our most skilled pilots. Nothing works. They adapt to everything we throw at them. The Mentari representative, a tall, thin being with large purple eyes, touched her temple with long fingers. Their minds, she said in a voice like singing. There is nothing there but hunger. They do not think like us. They only want to consume and grow. Kepler closed his eyes and made a decision that would change everything. He reached under his desk and pulled out a small black device that most council members had never seen before. It was marked with red symbols that meant danger in 50 different languages. There is one option we have not tried, he said. The room slowly got quiet as all the aliens turned to look at him. One species we have never asked for help. Cannot mean the humans, whispered Counselor Vexelin, her green skin turning pale. They are classified as too dangerous for contact. Kepler nodded slowly. I know what they are. I helped write the report that put them in quarantine. But look, around you, we are losing this war. Soon, there will be no one left to protect. The human homeworld of Earth sat in a quiet corner of the galaxy, marked with warning signs that kept all other species away. The first contact team that had visited the planet 50 years ago had come back with stories that seemed impossible. A world where everything was trying to kill everything else. Creatures that hunted other creatures for food, whether that could destroy cities. And in the middle of it all, species that had somehow survived and grown strong. The humans had built weapons that could destroy their own planet. They fought wars that lasted for years. They lived on a world with storms that could level mountains, and predators that could eat them whole. The contact team had called Earth a death world and recommended that humans should never be allowed to leave their planet. But now, with the Vorthok swarm eating the galaxy, that dangerous nature might be exactly what they needed. I will not vote for this, said Admiral Quinter of the Zelani fleet. Humans are unstable. They solve problems with violence. We bring them into our space. We might trade one monster for another. The Vorthok have consumed 47 worlds in the past month, Kepler said quietly. At this rate, they will reach the core systems within a year. We will all be dead. What does it matter if humans are dangerous if we are not alive to worry about it? The vote was close, but fear won over caution. The message was approved by a margin of 3 votes, far away on Earth. In a mountain facility buried deep under the Colorado mountains, alarms began to ring. The humans had been watching the stars for a long time, and they had noticed when whole solar systems started going dark. They had seen the energy signatures of great battles in the aftermath of consumed worlds, but they had never been contacted. By anyone out there, Commander Jake Morrison was drinking coffee in his office when his aide knocked on the door. Lieutenant Casey Brooks looked excited and scared at the same time. Sir, we just received a transmission from space. It's not from any human facility. Morrison put down his coffee mug and followed Brooks to the communication center. The message was short and simple, translated into basic English by computers that had been listening to alien signals for decades. People of Earth, we are the Galactic Council of Peaceful Worlds. We need your help. Something is destroying our civilization. We know you are strong warriors. Please come quickly. Many are dying. Morrison read the message 3 times. How long ago did this arrive? 2 minutes? Ago, sir? It came from the direction of the Galactic Center, about 26,000 light-years away. Get me the Joint Chiefs on a secure line now. The meeting that followed lasted 6 hours. Generals, admirals, and politicians argued about whether this was a trap, a test, or something else entirely. Some wanted to ignore the message completely. Others wanted to send a small scout ship to investigate. A few wanted to mobilize the entire human fleet. Morrison sat quietly and listened to them argue. He had spent his whole career preparing for the day when humanity would meet other intelligent life. He had studied every possible scenario, every potential threat, every diplomatic possibility. But he had never imagined that the first contact would be a cry for help. "Sir," said General Patricia Hayes, the head of Earth's defense forces, "what do you think we should do?" Morrison stood up and walked to the big screen that showed the galactic map. Red zones marked where the Vorthok swarm had been active. The pattern was clear. They were moving inward, consuming everything in their path. "We help them," he said simply. "That's what humans do. When someone is in trouble, we help. But we don't know anything about these aliens," protested Secretary of Defense Robert Chen. "They could be lying. This could be an invasion disguised as a request for help." Morrison turned to face the room. "Maybe, but look at those star charts. Whole solar systems are going dark. If someone is faking this, they're doing it on a scale that would take more resources than conquering Earth would be worth." "What kind of force do you want to send?" asked Admiral Linda Parker, the head of the space fleet. "I want Captain Lisa Martinez and the UDS Defiance for space operations, Colonel Ryan Parker and the 5th Shock Marines for ground operations, Dr. Helen Foster for xenobiology support. And I want enough firepower to fight a war if we have to." The room was quiet for a long moment. Everyone knew what Morrison was really saying. He wasn't just proposing a rescue mission. He was suggesting that humanity should go to war against something that had defeated an entire galactic civilization. "Sir," said General Hayes slowly, "are you sure about this? You've never fought anything like this before?" Morrison smiled, and for a moment he looked like the young soldier who had fought in the border wars 20 years ago. "General, we've never fought anything like us before either. The galaxy is about to find out what humans can do when someone threatens innocent people." The orders went out within hours. Ships were loaded with supplies and weapons. Marines checked their equipment and said goodbye to their families. Scientists packed instruments they hoped they would never need to use. And somewhere in the depths of space, an alien ambassador named Kepler waited nervously for an answer to his desperate plea for help. He had no idea that he had just awakened something that would change the galaxy forever. The humans were coming, and they were bringing their friends. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace, like a pack of metal wolves entering a peaceful meadow. The Galactic Council's emergency headquarters was a massive space station that looked like a crystal flower floating in the void. It was beautiful and graceful, built by beings who had known peace for thousands of years. The human ships were nothing like that. They were dark gray and covered in armor plates. Weapon ports lined their hulls like angry eyes. Even their smallest fighter craft bristled with missiles and railguns. To the aliens watching from their elegant vessels, the human fleet looked like it had been built for one purpose. War Captain Lisa Martinez stood on the bridge of the UDS Defiance, her hands clasped behind her back as she watched the alien station grow larger on the main screen. Around her, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations, but she could feel their tension. They were about to meet alien life for the first time, and none of them knew what to expect. "Captain," said Lieutenant Commander Tony Rodriguez from the communications station, "we're receiving a transmission from the station. They're asking us to dock at Bay 7. "Acknowledged," Martinez replied. "Take us in slowly, and keep the weapons powered but not targeted. We don't want to start a war on our first day." The docking bay was huge, big enough to hold 3 human cruisers. As the Defiance settled onto the deck, Martinez could see alien beings gathering beyond the transparent barrier. They were all different shapes and sizes. They all moved with the same careful grace that spoke of a life without predators. "Remember?" Martinez announced to her crew over the intercom. "We're here to help these people. But we don't know if this is a trap or if there are hostile forces in the area. Stay alert and be ready for anything." Commander Jake Morrison met Martinez at the airlock, along with Colonel Ryan Parker and Dr. Helen Foster. The 4 humans walked through the station's corridors, escorted by a group of nervous alien guards. The walls were covered with artwork that showed peaceful scenes from dozens of different worlds. Gardens and cities, families and festivals, all the things that the Vorthok swarm was trying to destroy. "Sir," whispered Dr. Foster, "look at how they're moving. They're staying as far away from us as possible without being obviously rude." Nodded. He had noticed it too. The aliens were afraid of them. Not just nervous about meeting a new species, but genuinely frightened. Their movements were too careful, too controlled. They were acting like prey animals, who had suddenly found themselves in the same room as predators. The council chamber was enormous. Seats for representatives from hundreds of different worlds. Most of them were empty now, their occupants. Either dead or fled to safer systems. The aliens who remained sat in small groups, their different languages creating a low murmur that filled the vast space. Ambassador Kepler stood at the center of the chamber, his blue scales reflecting the soft light that came from the ceiling. He was tall and thin, with large eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. When he spoke, his voice was translated by devices that turned his words into perfect English. "Welcome, humans," he said, bowing slightly. "I am Ambassador Kepler of the Zelani people. We're grateful that you answered our call for help." Morrison stepped forward, his military bearing making him look like a soldier even in his diplomatic uniform. "I'm Commander Jake Morrison, representing the United Earth Defense Command. We came as soon as we received your message." "Tell us about this swarm." What followed was the longest briefing Morrison had ever attended. The aliens showed them star charts that covered half the galaxy, with red zones marking where the Vorthok had struck. They played recordings of the last transmissions from dying worlds, voices crying out in dozens of languages as their civilizations ended. The Vorthok swarm was unlike anything in human science fiction. They were not robots or energy beings or even traditional biological creatures. They were something in between, a fusion of living tissue and advanced technology that could adapt to any threat. Their ships were grown rather than built, and they could change their shape and function based on what they encountered. "They learned from every battle," explained General Morthok, his forearms moving as he manipulated the holographic display. "The first time we used plasma weapons against them, they were effective. The second time, the creatures had adapted and our weapons did nothing. The third time, they had learned to absorb our energy and use it to make themselves stronger." Colonel Parker leaned forward in his seat. "What about kinetic weapons? Bullets, missiles, things that physically impact the target?" The aliens looked confused. "Kinetic weapons?" asked Counselor Vexilin. "You mean throwing rocks?" "More sophisticated than that," Parker said with a slight smile. "We've found that sometimes the old ways work best." Dr. Foster was taking notes. On a tablet, her fingers flying across the screen. "How do they reproduce? Do they have a central command structure? Are there different types of creatures in the swarm?" The questions kept coming, and Morrison could see that the aliens were becoming more and more uncomfortable. The humans were asking things that had never occurred to peaceful species. They wanted to know about weaknesses and vulnerabilities, about how to disrupt the enemy's supply lines and communication systems. "You're talking about this like it's a war," said Counselor Murthy of the Mentari. She was a delicate being with large purple eyes and the ability to sense thoughts and emotions. "We have been treating this as a natural disaster, something to be endured until it passes." Morrison looked at her with genuine confusion. "Ma'am, this is a war. An aggressive force is attacking and destroying your people. That's the definition of war." "But we are peaceful beings," Murthy replied. "We have not fought wars in thousands of years. We have forgotten how to think like warriors." Captain Martinez spoke up from her seat. "Then it's a good thing you called us. Humans remember how to fight." The tension in the room was getting thicker. The aliens were beginning to realize that. They had invited something dangerous into their space. The humans moved differently than they did, thought differently, reacted differently. Where the aliens saw a tragedy to be endured, the humans saw an enemy to be defeated. "How many ships do you have?" Morrison asked. "The combined fleet of all member worlds numbers approximately 50,000 vessels," Admiral Quinter replied, proudly. "And how many have you lost to the swarm?" The silence that followed was answer enough. Morrison looked around the chamber and saw the truth in their faces. The great Galactic Council, with their thousands of worlds and millions of years of civilization, were losing badly to an enemy they didn't understand. "We brought 12 ships," Morrison said quietly. "That's all Earth could spare for this mission. But those 12 ships carry something your fleets don't have. What is that?" Kepler, experienced Colonel Parker answered. "We've been fighting wars for our entire history. We know how to kill things that want to kill us." Dr. Foster looked up from her tablet. "I've been analyzing the data you've shown us. The Vorthok adapt to energy weapons and defensive strategies, but they seem to follow predictable patterns. They're not creative, they're just efficient." "Meaning what?" asked General Morthok. "Meaning they can be tricked," Morrison said. "They learn from what you do, but they don't anticipate what you might do differently. They're reactive, not proactive." The meeting continued for hours. The aliens showed the humans everything they knew about the swarm, every battle they had fought, every strategy they had tried. The humans absorbed it all with the focused attention of professional soldiers studying an enemy. Finally, Ambassador Kepler stood up. "What do you need from us?" Morrison stood as well. "We need detailed intelligence on the swarm's current position. We need to know which systems are still inhabited and which ones have been evacuated. And we need you to trust us to do what humans do best." Morrison's smile was not entirely reassuring. "We're going to teach the galaxy how to fight a war." As the meeting ended and the humans returned to their ship, the aliens watched them go with mixed feelings. They had asked for help, and help had arrived. But they were beginning to suspect that the cure might be as dangerous as the disease. On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Martinez was already reviewing star charts and planning their first move. "Commander," she said, "we're going to need more ships." "I know," Morrison replied. "But first, we need to show these aliens what humans can do. Once they see us fight, they'll understand why Earth survived when their peaceful worlds couldn't." War was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. The warning signals came in the middle of the night, ship time. Red lights flashed through the corridors of the Defiance as the crew rushed to their battle stations. The Vorthok swarm had been detected moving toward Xerion Prime, a mining colony. With over 1 billion people, Captain Martinez stood on the bridge, watching the tactical display as enemy contacts appeared on the screen. There were hundreds of them, dark shapes moving through space like a school of predatory fish. The swarm ships were not built like anything humans had ever seen. They were alive, growing, and changing as they moved. "Captain," reported Lieutenant. "Commander Rodriguez, the Galactic Council fleet is withdrawing from the system. They're abandoning the colony." Martinez felt her jaw tighten. "Get me Ambassador Kepler on the come." The alien's face appeared on the main screen, his blue scales pale with stress. "Captain Martinez, you must retreat immediately. The swarm is too strong. We cannot save Xerion Prime." "There are 1 billion people down there," Martinez said coldly. "We don't abandon civilians. It is unfortunate, but we must think of the greater good. If we lose our remaining ships trying to save one world, we will have nothing left to defend the core systems." Martinez cut the transmission and turned to her crew. "All hands, this is the captain. Alien fleet is retreating, but we are not. There are innocent people on that planet, and we are going to save them. This is what we came here to do." Commander Morrison's voice crackled over the intercom from his command ship. "All units, this is Morrison. We have civilians down there. That means we hold the line no matter what. Show these aliens what humans do when someone threatens innocent people." The battle began when the Vorthok scouts reached the edge of the system. The creatures moved in perfect coordination, their bioships rippling and changing shape as they approached the human fleet. They had fought the Council's ships many times before, and had learned to counter their tactics. They had never fought humans. Lieutenant Commander Tony Rodriguez piloted his fighter through the enemy formation, his ship's armor already scarred by acidic weapons that ate through metal like liquid fire. Around him, the other pilots of Phoenix Squadron weaved between the alien monsters, their weapons blazing. "Phoenix Squadron, remember your training," Rodriguez called over the comm. "These things adapt to energy weapons, so we go kinetic. Use your railguns and missiles. And if you run out of ammo, ram the bastards." The alien observers watching from their retreating ships were horrified. The humans were using their own vessels as weapons, diving their fighters into creatures 10 times their size. It was insane, suicidal, and completely effective. The Vorthok had evolved to absorb energy and learn from it. They could adapt to plasma beams and particle weapons within minutes of first contact. But they could not adapt to a chunk of metal moving at a significant fraction of light speed. The human railguns punched through their bioarmor like it was paper. On the planet's surface, Colonel Ryan Parker's Marines were establishing a perimeter around the evacuation sites. The Xerion colonists were a peaceful species called the Threnody, small furry beings who had never seen war. They huddled in the transport ships, watching in terror as the sky filled with fire. "Incoming," Sergeant Amy Chen shouted as the first wave of Vorthok ground forces landed. The creatures that emerged from the biopods were nightmares made flesh. They had no fixed shape, flowing from one form to another as they moved. Sometimes they looked like giant spiders, sometimes like wolves, sometimes like things that had no name. Private Danny Kim raised his plasma rifle and fired at the nearest creature. The beam hit it squarely in what might have been its center of mass, and for a moment the monster staggered. Then it absorbed the energy and grew larger, its form shifting to something even more dangerous. "Energy weapons are useless," Chen reported. "Switch to kinetics." The Marines changed tactics instantly. Bullets and grenades replaced plasma beams and particle weapons. The Vorthok had adapted to energy, but they had no defense against old-fashioned explosives and high-velocity projectiles. The battle raged across the colony's main city. The Vorthok were fast, deadly, and utterly without mercy. They flowed through the streets like living nightmares, consuming everything in their path. But the humans were faster, deadlier. They had something the Vorthok could not understand. They were fighting for something other than themselves. "That's for the kids in Sector 7. Private Kim shouted as he tossed a grenade into a cluster of enemies. Explosions sent biomatter flying in all directions. Kim was already moving to the next target. Corporal Lisa Wong used her flamethrower to create a wall of fire between the monsters and a group of fleeing civilians. The Vorthok tried to absorb the thermal energy, but the chemical fire was too chaotic, too unpredictable. It burned them faster than they could adapt. "Medical station is secure," reported Sergeant Ben Foster over the comm. "We've got wounded civilians, but the area is clear of hostiles." The humans fought with a savagery that matched the aliens' monstrous nature, but it was a different kind of violence. Were the Vorthok killed because it was their nature? The humans killed because they had to. Every shot was fired to protect someone else. Every grenade was thrown to by time for an evacuation. Above the planet, space battle was reaching its climax. The Vorthok had sent their largest bioships to overwhelm the small human fleet. These creatures were the size of cities, their bodies covered in weapon pods that could fire in all directions at once. "Captain," Martinez watched as one of the monsters approached her ship. It was beautiful in a horrible way, its surface rippling. With colors that had no names, weapon ports opened along its flanks like flowers blooming in fast motion. "All batteries target the creature's propulsion organs," Martinez ordered. "If we can't kill it, we'll cripple it." The Defiance's main guns spoke in unison, sending streams of tungsten projectiles into the bioship's drive systems. The creature tried to adapt, growing new armor to protect its vulnerable areas, but the humans kept changing their targets. They did not fight like the organized aliens the Vorthok had encountered before. They fought like the predators they were, going for weak spots and vital organs. Dr. Helen Foster worked frantically in the ship's laboratory, analyzing samples of Vorthok biomatter that had been collected during the battle. Her findings were both fascinating and terrifying. "They're not just adapting," she reported to Morrison. "They're evolving in real time. Each generation of creatures is stronger than the last. But the process requires enormous amounts of energy. If we can disrupt their feeding cycle, we might be able to slow them down." Morrison studied the data on his screen. "What kind of disruption? Electromagnetic interference?" "The creatures communicate through bioelectrical signals. If we can jam those signals, they'll lose their coordination." "Do it." The human ships began broadcasting on all frequencies, filling space with electronic noise. The effect on the Vorthok was immediate and dramatic. Their perfect coordination dissolved into chaos as individual creatures lost contact with the swarm's collective intelligence. The battle turned in that moment. The Vorthok, cut off from their hive mind, began to make mistakes. They attacked each other in confusion, their adaptive abilities working against them as they tried to counter threats that were not there. 18 hours after the first contact, the last Vorthok ship fled the system. Xerion Prime was still inhabited. 1 billion Threneti colonists were alive, and the swarm had suffered their first defeat in 3 years. The cost had been high. The human fleet had lost 3 ships and over 200 personnel, but they had proven something important to both themselves and their alien allies. They could win. As the evacuation continued and the wounded were treated, Ambassador Kepler arrived in the system with a small diplomatic vessel. He found Commander Morrison standing in the ruins of the colony's main square, talking with 3 Noti survivors. Commander Kepler said quietly, "I owe you an apology. My people were ready to sacrifice these innocent beings for what we called the greater good. You showed us that there is no greater good than protecting those who cannot protect themselves." Morrison looked at the alien ambassador with tired eyes. "That's the difference between us, Ambassador. Your people have been at peace so long that you've forgotten what it means to fight for something you believe in. Humans have never had that luxury. What happens now?" Kepler asked. Morrison smiled, and for the first time since the battle began, it was not a predator's smile. "Now we teach the galaxy how to fight back. The swarm thinks they're the apex predators out here. It's time they met something higher." Up the food chain, word of the human victory spread through the galaxy faster than light. On peaceful worlds throughout the core systems, beings who had given up hope began to believe again. And somewhere in the dark between the stars, the Vorthok swarm felt something they had never experienced before. Fear. The humans had come to help. They had brought something with them that the galaxy had almost forgotten. They had brought war. The news of the human victory at Xerion Prime traveled through the galaxy like wildfire, but it carried a darker message with it. The Vorthok swarm had never been defeated before, and they did not like losing. Their response was swift and overwhelming. 3 entire hive fleets changed course and began moving toward the Kepler Nebula, where the human task force had set up a temporary base. The swarm's scouts had identified the humans as the new threat, and they were bringing everything they had to eliminate it before it could spread. Admiral Susan Walsh stood in the command center of the UDS Valiant, studying the tactical display with growing concern. The red dots representing enemy ships seemed to cover half the screen. Her intelligence officer had just finished counting them, and the numbers were not encouraging. 50-1 odds, Admiral, reported Commander Pete Jackson. It's maybe worse. The swarm is bringing their heavy bioships, the ones that can eat entire moons. Walsh looked around the room at her officers. They were good people, experienced fighters who had served in Earth's border conflicts for years, but none of them had ever faced anything like this. "Recommendations? We should fall back to the core systems," suggested her tactical officer. "Set up defensive positions and make them come to us." "That would mean abandoning the outer colonies," Walsh replied. "Millions of people would die while we got ready to fight." Commander Morrison's voice came through the comm system from his flagship. "Negative on the retreat, Admiral. We knew this would happen. It's time to execute Protocol 7. All smiled. For the first time in hours. Morrison was right. They had planned for this moment during the long journey from Earth. The humans had spent years studying alien psychology through intercepted communications and observation. They knew how the galaxy worked. They knew its biggest weakness. Everyone fought alone. The Great Galactic Council had thousands of member worlds, but they had never learned to work together as a single unit. Each species had its own military, doctrine, its own technology, its own way of doing things. When the Vorthok attacked, each world fought by itself and lost by itself. Humans had evolved differently. On Earth, the most successful predators hunted in packs. They coordinated their attacks, shared information, and supported each other. Humans had taken this concept and expanded it until entire nations could work together toward a common goal. Now, they were going to teach the galaxy how to do the same thing. Begin Phase 1, Morrison ordered. Send the signal to all human ships. It's time to call on our friends.
Ow.
The trap had been 3 weeks in the making. While the aliens recovered from their losses and the Vorthok regrouped for their counterattack, the humans had been busy. They had visited every world in the sector, talking to local defense forces and sharing their knowledge. The humans did not just teach tactics and weapons. They taught something much more important. They taught cooperation. Commander Pete Jackson led the first wave of the ambush, but his squadron was not made up of human ships. Half of his pilots were Zilani, flying their sleek energy-based fighters that had been retrofitted with human kinetic weapons. The other half were Karathi there, four-armed pilots perfectly suited to operating the complex weapon systems that the humans had designed. Blue Squadron, this is Jackson, he called over the comm. Remember what we practiced? The Vorthok can adapt to energy weapons, but they can't adapt to weapons they don't understand. Hit them with the kinetics first, then switch to energy once. They start adapting to the physical impacts. The mixed squadron emerged from the nebula's ionized gas clouds like a pack of wolves attacking a herd. The Vorthok bioships tried to respond with their usual tactics. But the coordination between human and alien pilots was something they had never encountered before. Zilani fighters used their superior speed to draw the enemy's attention, while Karathi bombers struck from unexpected angles. Human pilots coordinated the attacks, their voices calm and professional as they guided their alien wingmates through the chaos of battle. Target the big one's sensor clusters, Jackson ordered. Karathi bombers, you're clear for your attack. Run. The Vorthok had fought thousands of battles against the peaceful species of the galaxy. They knew how to counter Zilani's speed and Karathi firepower. But they had no experience fighting an enemy that combined both advantages and used them in ways that neither species had ever attempted on their own. Dr. Helen Foster had been working around the clock in her laboratory, analyzing every piece of Vorthok biomatter the humans had collected. Her breakthrough came when she realized that the creature's greatest strength was also their greatest weakness, their communication network. She explained to Morrison over the secure channel, they share information instantly across their entire fleet. That's how they adapt so quickly. But it also means they're all connected to the same frequency. Can we disrupt it? Better than that, we can hijack it. Foster's plan was typically human in its audacity. Instead of just jamming the Vorthok communication network, she wanted to broadcast something that would confuse and disorient them. Creatures operated on pure biological efficiency. They had no concept of art, music, or creativity, so the humans decided to give them some. Attention all ships, Foster announced. Begin broadcasting on frequency 774, maximum volume, across the human fleet. Communication arrays began transmitting Earth's greatest musical hits directly into the Vorthok hive mind. Rock and roll, classical symphonies, jazz improvisations, and everything in between flooded the creature's neural networks. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Vorthok had evolved to process information, not entertainment. Their perfect coordination dissolved as their collective intelligence tried to make sense of concepts like rhythm, melody, and harmony. Individual bioships began flying in circles, their pilots overwhelmed by the chaotic beauty of human creativity. This is incredible, reported Captain Lisa Martinez from the Defiance. They're completely confused. Half of them are attacking each other, and the other half are just floating in space. The battle became a symphony of destruction with a soundtrack that would have made any human proud. The Vorthok creatures of pure biological efficiency could not process the organized chaos of human music. Their perfect adaptation abilities turned against them as they tried to evolve defenses against something that existed only in the imagination. But the real surprise came when the alien crews began to understand what they were hearing. The Zilani pilots, flying alongside their human wingmates, started to move in rhythm with the music. The Karathi bombers coordinated their attacks to match the beat of ancient Earth war songs. "This is amazing," called out Wing Commander Veltar of the Zilani forces. "Your music makes us feel stronger, more confident." "Is this how humans always fight?" "Sometimes," Jackson replied with a grin. "Wait until you hear what we play at victory celebrations." The Mentari ships, crewed by telepathic beings who could sense emotions, reported the strangest effects of all. The human music was not just sound to them, it was pure feeling, transmitted directly into their minds. For the first time in their peaceful existence, they felt the warrior's joy of battle. The fierce protective instinct that drove humans to fight against impossible odds. "I understand now," transmitted Counselor Murthy from her command ship. "This is what you call courage. It's not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it." The Vorthok fleet, already disrupted by the musical assault, found itself facing an enemy that fought with unprecedented coordination. Human tactical doctrine spread through the Allied fleet like a virus, teaching alien crews to think like predators instead of prey. The turning point came when the swarm's largest bioship, a creature the size of a small moon, tried to ram the human flagship. Commander Morrison watched it approach on his main screen, its surface rippling with weapon pods and sensory organs. "All ships converge on my position," Morrison ordered. "Time to show these things what a real pack hunt looks like." Fleet attacked from all sides at once, not randomly, but with the precise coordination of Earth's apex predators. Each ship had a role, each pilot knew their part, each attack was timed to support the others. The massive bioship tried to adapt, growing new defenses and weapons as the battle raged. But every time it evolved to counter one threat, three more appeared from different directions. The humans had taught their alien allies the most important lesson of pack hunting. The prey cannot watch everywhere at once. When the creature finally died, its biomass dissolving into the cosmic void, the remaining Vorthok ships fled in panic. For the first time in their existence, they had encountered something that hunted better than they did. Admiral Walsh watched the tactical display as the enemy contacts disappeared one by one. The trap had worked perfectly. Swarm had brought 50 ships to destroy 12 humans and had lost more than half their force instead. "Status report," she called out. "Minimal casualties," her tactical officer replied. 3 human ships damaged, no alien vessels lost. The coordinated attack pattern worked exactly as planned. Morrison's voice came over the comm, filled with satisfaction. "That's how you fight a war, people. Not as individuals, not even as separate species, but as a team." 6 months later, the war against the Vorthok swarm was ending in a way that no one had expected. It was not ending with the total destruction of either side, but with something the galaxy had never seen before. The most feared predators in known space were asking for peace. The final battle had not been a battle at all. It had been a hunt that lasted 3 weeks, with human-led fleets chasing the remnants of the swarm through empty space. The creatures that had once consumed entire solar systems were now running, scattered and broken, toward the edge of the galaxy. Commander Jake Morrison stood in the observation deck of his flagship, looking out at the Vorthok home system. It was a place of nightmare beauty, with planets that writhed and moved like living things. At the center of it all was the Queen Mind, a biostructure the size of Earth's moon that housed the collective intelligence of the entire swarm. "Sir," reported his communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the Queen Mind. It wants to talk." Morrison was not surprised. The humans had been intercepting Vorthok communications for weeks, and Dr. Foster had finally managed to crack their bioelectrical language. The messages they had decoded told a story that was both alien and strangely familiar. The swarm was dying, not from the war, though the humans and their allies had certainly hurt them badly. The Vorthok were dying because they had forgotten how to do anything except consume. For millions of years, they had spread across the galaxy, eating everything in their path. But now they had eaten so much that there was nothing left in their home region except empty worlds and dead space. They had become victims of their own success. "Put the Queen Mind through," Morrison ordered. "Let's hear what it has to say." The voice that came through the speakers was unlike anything Morrison had ever heard. It was not the voice of an individual creature, but the combined thoughts of billions of beings speaking as one. It sounded tired, ancient, and strangely sad. "Human Morrison," the Queen Mind said, its words translated by the ship's computers. "You are the death of worlds. Your kind brings ending to all things. Why do you fight for those who are not your blood? Morrison walked closer to the speaker, his hands clasped behind his back. Around him, his bridge crew listened in silence. This was history being made, the first real conversation between humanity and the galaxy's greatest threat. "We fight because that's what humans do," Morrison replied simply. "We protect the innocent, even if it costs us everything." There was a long pause before the Queen Mind responded. "We do not understand this concept. Protection without gain. Fighting without feeding. Your actions make no sense to us." "That's because you've forgotten what it means to create instead of destroy," Morrison said. "You've been consuming for so long that you don't remember how to build anything new." The negotiation that followed lasted 3 days. Morrison was joined by Ambassador Kepler and representatives from a dozen other species, but it was clear that the Vorthok were only interested in talking to the humans. The other aliens were prey to them, but humans were something different. Something that could hunt the hunters. Dr. Helen Foster played a crucial role in the talks. Her analysis of Vorthok biology had revealed something remarkable. The creatures were not evil in any way that humans understood the concept. They were simply following their nature, like sharks or wolves. They consumed because that was how they had evolved to survive. The problem is that they've outgrown their environment. Foster explained to Morrison during a break in the negotiations. They're like a cancer that has consumed its host. If they keep going the way they are, they'll eventually eat everything in the galaxy and then starve to death. What's your recommendation? We give them something new to do, something that uses their abilities but doesn't require them to destroy existing life. The solution, when it came, was typically human in its simplicity. The galaxy was full of dead worlds, planets that had never developed life or had lost it to natural disasters. The Vorthok could use their biotechnology to transform these worlds, turning them into new habitats that could support life. "You want us to create instead of consume?" the Queen Mind asked when Morrison presented the proposal. "We want you to survive," Morrison replied. "Your current path leads to extinction. Our path leads to a future where both our species can coexist." Queen Mind was silent for a long time. When it finally spoke, its voice carried something that sounded almost like wonder. "You would teach us how to build instead of destroy? You would share your knowledge with those who have been your enemies?" "That's what humans do," Morrison said. "We help people who want to change." The final agreement was signed in the ruins of what had once been the Vorthok's greatest feeding ground, system where they had consumed 17 planets in a single feeding frenzy. Now it would become their first construction site, where they would learn to create worlds instead of destroying them. The swarm agreed to retreat to the galactic rim, to the empty regions where no intelligent life existed. In exchange, the humans would provide them with terraforming technology and teach them how to use their bioengineering abilities for construction instead of destruction. Captain Lisa Martinez watched from the bridge of the Defiance as the first Vorthok bioships began their long journey to the rim. The creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for 3 years were leaving, not as conquerors, but as refugees seeking a new way of life. "It's hard to believe," she said to her first officer. 6 months ago, those things were eating entire worlds. Now they're going to be building them. You think it will work?" Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez asked. Martinez considered the question. "I think humans have a talent for believing that anyone can change if they really want to. Maybe we're right, maybe we're wrong, but it's worth trying." Back at the Galactic Council headquarters, the victory celebration was strangely subdued. The aliens had gotten what they wanted, peace, but they had also seen something that both inspired and frightened them. They had watched humans take their greatest enemy and turn them into potential allies. Ambassador Kepler found Commander Morrison in one of the station's observation lounges, looking out at the stars. The human leader seemed tired, older than he had been when he first arrived. "Your species has saved us all," Kepler said quietly. "The Council would like to offer humanity full membership in our government. You could help us lead the galaxy into a new age of peace." Morrison shook his head slowly. "We appreciate the offer, Ambassador, but that's not who we are. We're not politicians or administrators. We're protectors." "What will you do now?" Morrison smiled, and for the first time in months, it was not the smile of a predator or a warrior. It was the smile of someone who had done a good job and was ready to go home. We're going back to Earth, but we'll be watching. When someone needs help, when the innocent are threatened, when the galaxy calls for aid, we'll come. And if the Vorthok break their agreement, if they return to their old ways, Morrison's expression grew serious. Then we'll remind them why. They wanted peace in the first place. As the human fleet prepared to depart, ships from dozens of worlds came to see them off. The aliens who had once feared these dangerous Deathworlders now understood what made humans truly special. It was not their weapons or their tactics or their ability to fight. It was their refusal to give up on anyone, even their enemies. The journey back to Earth took 2 months. When the human ships finally entered their home system, they were met by a hero's welcome. The entire planet watched as the task force that had saved the galaxy returned home. But the real celebration was quieter. It's more personal. In military hospitals and veteran centers across Earth, the survivors of the Vorthok War gathered to remember their fallen comrades and to process what they had experienced. Morrison stood before a memorial wall in the main military cemetery, reading the names of the humans who had died in the war. 237 names, representing someone who had given their life to protect strangers they would never meet. Was it worth it? Asked Dr. Foster, who had come to stand. Beside him, Morrison looked up at the night sky, where new stars were visible thanks to the improved relations with alien civilizations. Somewhere out there, the Vorthok were learning to build instead of destroy. Somewhere else, the peaceful species of the galaxy were learning to stand together instead of falling separately. Ask me in 100 years, Morrison said finally, when we see what kind of galaxy our children inherit. The war was over, but its lessons would last forever. Galaxy had learned that even the most dangerous predators could be reasoned with, that even the most peaceful species could learn to fight when necessary, and that sometimes the difference between survival and extinction was simply having someone who refused to give up. On Earth, children played games about space marines and alien worlds. The phrase pack mentality became part of the common language, representing humanity's greatest strength. Their ability to work together and bring others into their group. And in the quiet moments between crises, veterans like Morrison carried a simple truth. They had not won because they were stronger or smarter than their enemies. They had won because when the galaxy called for help, humans had answered.